with another episode of World 1-1 Podcast. Holy shit, we're back in the goddamn driver's seat. Your download has finished, our shit has installed, and get ready to press start to engage your mind. Real quick, before we dive in, a tease on the third half of the show this week. Wes and I are actually going to be talking about the future of handheld gaming. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you hang around because there's good shit there and you're going to want to check it out. But now that we got that out of the way, real quick reminder, you should subscribe to the show and whatever your podcast catcher platform of choice is, whether it be YouTube Music now because Google Play Music is shutting down, or Google Podcasts is shutting down rather. Play Music is sticking around, but whatever. No, Play Music died before that. Holy shit. God, it's all weird.
Google,
Anyways,
stop killing stuff.
Right. No kidding. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to take a side note here because this whole transition from Google Podcasts to YouTube Music has not been great. They didn't have all their ducks in a row when they pulled the trigger on starting this. And so there's a bunch of fucking features that are missing from the podcast side of things on YouTube Music. And I know this because I've been using YouTube Music for my podcast listening at work these days, just to, try and get a handle on it instead of being shoved into it with Google Podcasts just being gone. And the biggest travesty right now is that there is no share function for the podcast in YouTube Music. Like, what the hell? Yeah, no, it's messy and gross. I'm like, if you're migrating to YouTube, put fucking comments on it. Put like individual review. The stuff that isn't on Google Podcasts already. You're moving to another platform. Give me a reason. Show me some improvements, not downgrades. Jesus Christ.
Larry, you're making too much sense here.
Yeah, tell me about it. But, in any case, subscribe, share with your friends, or if we're just insufferable, then force somebody that you don't like to listen to this for an hour. That's your call. I'm not going to tell you, how to spend your time here other than you should listen to us and make other people listen to us. As for what your motives for doing so are, that's entirely up to you, and I'm not judging. But also, in the links in the show notes down below, you can find the link to our Discord where you can come chat with us. And a quick shout out to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors. More about them just before the break. With all that out of the way, I am, as always, your host, Roll to the Wall, and joining me this week is Wes Evans. What's up?
Well, you see, it's a Pixar movie about this old man and a little boy, and they fly to South America in a house with a bunch of balloons that tie to it.
I'm so proud of you. God, you make me happy inside. It's another great Pixar movie. It's getting a sequel, and I'm actually really fucking excited for that.
Up's getting a sequel? I didn't hear
about
that.
No, Inside is.
Oh, Inside Out. Yeah.
I think it's just Inside 2. I don't think it's Inside Out, but it might be. I don't know. But Inside's getting a sequel, and it looks really fucking promising. I'm super excited. So take that for what you will. But yeah, let's get into the meat and potatoes, because let me tell you, I got a bunch since we've been gone for a hot minute here. Real quick update for the three people that listen to our nonsense on a regular basis. We took most of December off just because everybody's schedules were nuts with holidays, and the plan was to be back up and running at the beginning of January. And just when we were getting ready to, my computer took a ever-loving shit, and so I had to get some repairs done and get it working again, and it's finally up and running with pretty new lights, which is completely coincidental. There was nothing intentional. It just happened. But so we're up and running again. That's where we've been. That's why we've been gone. It's, it's nothing nefarious. It just was. So let's jump straight to, oh my God, video games. Wes, tell me about what you've been playing. All the Yakuza and Like a Dragon, I'm assuming.
You would think that if it weren't for the fact that I hadn't just got a PS5, so naturally I'm having to make up for time on that.
Hey, we've both been playing on new systems.
Yeah, so the answer is I'm going to be getting to that back very shortly, but I had to platinum all 3 Spider-Man games. I had to do it. So, Spider-Man Remastered, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2. That's been my main rotation. I did play Astro's Playroom because that's on there. It's a nice little platformer. Also platinumed that because it took like 2 hours. Don't know if I'm gonna keep platinuming every single game I play on PlayStation, but
no, there's no point.
No.
It's great if it's a game you love to be able to tick the box, but you know, it's not my bag.
Yeah.
I respect those that have the time and the dedication to do that shit, but fuck, that is not me.
It definitely depends on the game.
So are you doing PS Plus with all the back catalog of goodies as well?
Not yet. They have a deal for PS Plus new subscribers. Hopefully that stays until I get paid next week. I'll have to double check that. But I will be getting to that soon, hopefully.
Okay. I will say there's definitely some really good stuff on there. The access to the back catalog of PS1 and PS2 and PS3 games is wonderful. Some really good big bangers on there, like Legend of Dragoon, the God of War, stuff like that. So, which I would probably still be paying for it at the moment because Michael has very generously several months ago basically like indefinitely loaned me his PS4 since he's got a 5 and the 4 was just collecting dust. And there's some PlayStation exclusives that I wanted to play. There is I can only think of like one PS5 exclusive that I want to play that's really calling my name, and that is not enough for me to drop that kind of fucking money. Especially when I don't have it.
Yeah, that I understand.
Like Returnal is the one that's got my attention.
Returnal's on PC.
I don't have a PC that can do that.
That's fair.
My PC is almost as old as my child.
I will say this. I liked Spider-Man 2 a whole awful lot. Alone, I would not say that game on its own is worth the $500 to drop a PS4 or a PS5. I'm sure I will have enough games that it will be worth it before the cycle is over.
Yeah.
I would call it a very, very, very good game. I would not call it a system seller.
Now, did you have a PS4 or is this your first time back with Sony in a while?
So I have never myself had a PlayStation. My fiance brought her PS4 over for a little bit while we were just dating and not engaged. But it was her sister's, not hers, so we couldn't keep it for long.
Okay. I'll put a couple on your radar that are worth checking out. Especially if you do the PS Plus, which not all of these are on there, but you can find hard copies for pretty cheap these days. God damn it. Death Stranding is really fucking interesting. This is one of those where, we talked about it a while ago. I wouldn't call it a fun game, but it is a really fucking interesting game. That hits on some really neat thematics.
I played that while it was on PC Game Pass.
Okay.
Konami did not treat Kojima right at all, but that game is proof that someone needs to be in the room to occasionally tell him no.
I disagree. Like, somebody has always been at the wheel of Kojima games saying no, and I think that being able to see the full extent of his unhinged vision is something that was a long time coming.
I would argue that just being weird doesn't make the game good, though.
Oh, I repeat, I'm not saying it's good or it's fun. I'm saying it's interesting. And that he, in having full control over what he was doing with Death Stranding, makes for one, a more pure artistic vision, and 2 allows him to better explore the thematics that he wants to.
That I can't say you're wrong on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that I saw the trailer for Death Stranding 2, and I think I sent you my thoughts on it, or at least my very abridged thoughts on it, which is, my God, it looks like they're actually trying to make a good game.
Oh, I agreed. More accurately, I think what you're getting at is that they're trying to make a fun game, which I still contend that not all games need to be fun to be good.
That's fair.
Like, I will forever point to Hellblade. Hellblade is not fun, but it is incredible.
I would actually say I had a lot of fun playing Hellblade. I really like the combat in that game. I don't like the line of sight puzzles. I'll be honest there. Those I could have done without.
Like I said, just given what Hellblade is about and representing, it's not meant to be fun. It's meant to put you in the shoes, in the head of somebody that is suffering, so that you experience their suffering the way they do.
That's fair. But
which, God, I'm so ready for Hellblade 2.
I am too. That's gonna be one I play when it comes out.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I'll get there. But so what else you been spinning? What else has had your attention?
Whenever the fiance had dibs on TV, I put Hades back on circulation lately. I've been trying to get all the Steam achievements in it. I'm almost all the way done. Unfortunately, or depending on how you look at it, the story can move at a snail's pace. That's the one thing I don't like about the game. And so I'm still trying to get a few of those prophecies together. Still trying to
story moves at the pace of your skill.
No, the story moves significantly slower than the pace of your skill. Because in order to progress the story, you have to, the point where I'm stuck at right now is trying to get Nyx and Chaos reunited. And that requires a lot of darkness. Part of the problem is you only get darkness about 10 or 12 at a time, depending on if you have the weapon that gives you more, unless you have beaten that biome on the heat, but not beaten Hades himself on that heat, if that makes sense. So if you made it all the way to the final boss and then lose, you can get darkness real easy, or you can replay at a lower heat. The problem is, I don't want to replay at a lower heat. I want to replay at a high heat. So I say, okay, I'm getting a little bit better each time. What I ended up having to do to speed this along was I reset my mirror in the game so that I got all the darkness back but lost all those upgrades, and just basically ended up buying the upgrade I needed, not upgrade, the work order through the contractor I needed to try to move this along, and then just bought back as many of my upgrades as I could.
That's fair. So,
Still working on reuniting Achilles and Patroclus, which is very dependent on finding Patroclus, which is pure RNG, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I'm almost at max ranking all keepsakes. That won't be much longer.
Okay. Have we been dabbling in anything else?
That's really about it.
Okay.
I mean, I've been hearing a lot about Power World because my fiance's been playing that lately since it's on Game Pass. I feel like one day I want to actually play it, whether I like it or not, just so I can, be actually in these discussions about it's stealing from Pokemon. No, it's stealing from Ark. Actually, look, it's stealing from Elden Ring. Look at these castles in the background.
Right.
I don't know who or what it's stealing from. I'm of the opinion, though, I hope it's stealing from Pokemon because, frankly, they are so lazy that they deserve people being lazy off of them.
I've been having some light conversations with a few people on the subject of Pal World and Pokemon, but that's a topic for a different day. I suppose that tosses the ball over to me, which it's kind of a good thing. It's just the two of us, because I'm not going to lie, I've got kind of a bigger than usual list this week. But again, we've been gone for almost 2 months at this point, and I have a new system in the house, so I've been playing a whole bunch of stuff, and I haven't gotten super deep with a lot of it, but I have definitely been like cracking open and dipping my toes into a bunch of things lately. Case in point, before we started recording, I was just starting, and I'm a little sad LeGrew's not here for this, because I know let's get him excited. I just started Control because I caught that on sale for like $8.
Mm.
And I am still in the very, very beginnings of Control working, but it's super fucking trippy, and it's my kind of jam. Like, I love that kind of fucking head trip shit that it does. I'm a big fan of the pistol in that game. It's really fucking cool. I like the floaty bits and the auto recharge ammunition, which has got my brain thinking about other things for future episodes. But in any case, so Control is cool. On the indie side, Jusant. Oh, Jusant is so cool.
I've heard good things about that. That's the climbing game, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just like how most AAA games do climbing as hold up. Maybe you have to press jump when you're at the ledge.
No, you have to like individually control each arm, each hand. It makes it a very thoughtful process. And I will say that it reminds me a lot of the climb on the Oculus, or the MetaQuest, or whatever they call it anymore. I'm still going to call it the Oculus. I don't give a shit. It's a better name. But I've played a fair amount of the climb on Oculus, and Jusant feels a lot like the climb as a console version, with a little more indie flair to it in terms of like the soul and the spirit of the game, in terms of having that quaint, charming story component and that flavor, versus here is a climbing simulation. Now, that said, the climb does climbing simulation really well, and that's something that's really hard to replicate outside of VR, but Jusant does a really competent job of it. I will say, I think they both owe their existence to a predecessor on the Game Boy Advance, which was DK King of Swing, which was all about climbing and individual left and right hand control manipulation. So if you ever get a chance, check that out. It's a neat little game. But so Jusant, I've also dipped my toes into Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
That is a good one. When that game came out, at the time, I was doing a one-man EA boycott. Simply like, even if a game interested me, I was like, you know what? No, I hate the company so much, I'm not even going to play anything by them. Then that game came out, was on sale for Christmas that year. I was like, you know what? I've held on to this long enough. I will make one exception. It's by Respawn. I loved Titanfall when that came out.
So I decided I really just kind of wanted the story and the basic experience, so I actually set my difficulty to just story mode. So it's about idiot proof, but I can still enjoy the gameplay and the story and the presentation. And I like it. I'm enjoying it. I'm not even going to call it a dig. Just a note is that playing it, I definitely felt what felt like early 360 jank. It's not anything substantial or big or anything that'll make me stop playing it, but I'm playing, I'm like, this has some parts that feel way rougher around the edges than it should for what should be a big polished AAA game. If
you would like
that's just me.
A good AA game, I would call it, that like has a ton of 360 jank, and I mean this in a good way. Highly recommend Evil West.
Okay.
It's
Is that the one that's the sequel to West of Loathing?
No, it's not even close to that.
Okay.
It is made by the same people who made the the modern Shadow Warrior games, but
Okay.
it's a third-person shooter instead of first. It's not really more of a shooter because there's a lot of emphasis on melee combat. It's basically cowboys versus vampires, and there's a
Oh, that
lot
has
of
my attention
360
now.
jank in it, and I mean that in a good way. A lot of people I heard James Stephanie Sterling refer to it as a video game video game, and I think that is a good way to describe it.
We were talking about Sterling, myself and a couple of other people last weekend, actually, but that's a whole different conversation. So a little bit of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I know you saw in the chat I have cracked into the Dead Space remake, and
I'm still waiting for you to acknowledge that you were wrong and the remake was better.
I will finish it, but so far my heart still lies with the original.
I respect your opinion, but I legitimately cannot see how.
There's just something about the lower fidelity that creates a little more sense of vagueness, and that vagueness helps emphasize and give the horror more punch for me personally.
I feel like like many ways more than makes up for it though, because like the lighting is so much better. So now it's not, you don't see the enemy because they're one shade of brown against another shade of brown. It's you don't see the enemy because we can actually say turn the lights off and still make it look good. It's the graphics, the sound, the controls, the parts of Dead Space 1 that suck, like the turret missions, are now tolerable.
See, I never had a problem with the turret sections.
Really?
Seriously. Never bothered me. I liked them. I did well with them. So, but, take that for what it's worth. I fully am aware that, I am an outlier here, but there's my opinion on it anyways. So do with that what you will, I suppose. Oh God, what else have I been cracking on? So, and I'll save this for later in depth, but I did finally get to start Grime.
Okay.
And I really like it. My only complaint with Grime is that the text boxes are huge and the text is tiny, and you can't fucking change it.
That is a major accessibility problem.
Like, I've got a 47-inch TV on the wall at the foot of my bed in the bedroom, and I am squinting to read the fucking text. And it irritates the shit out of me.
Yeah, that's
outside of that, I really like it. I'm early in it, but I'm liking it. I've been waiting on this shit for what feels like ages. There's some irony in the fact that I just got a fucking Series X, and I could have just bought it on the Series X when I got it, but then, I was waiting and I had plenty of other stuff to play, and I've been waiting for it on the Switch for like a year and a half, 2 years, because it was supposed to release on Switch ages ago, and then got quietly delayed indefinitely. And then at the beginning of January, they're like, hey, Definitive Edition is out on all platforms finally at the end of the month with all the DLC. And I'm like, Jesus. So I waited and I bought it on Switch. But excuse me. So, but Grime is very heavy on the parry counter mechanic, which I know Michael was saying he was not a big fan of, and I can very much see it if that's not your jam, especially if you're not big on the whole Souls like stuff, which I'm not a big like Dark Souls person. I respect it. I look at it and go, that's really impressive, but it's not the kind of thing that compels me to play it. Like I like the world building and everything around it, but the gameplay in those doesn't move the needle for me a whole ton. I'll still probably pick one and give it a full swing one day, especially with Game Pass and a Series X in the house now. But been playing Grime. I really like it. It's really pretty. I can't compare how it performs or looks to the other console versions, but what's on Switch is plenty fine for me. Been dabbling a little bit with the world list, which also is real heavy on the timed like parry counter mechanic, but in a rhythm game sense. But it's got a little bit of like turn-based real-time RPG action combat. Kind of think back to Legend of Dragoon, and how they did their combat system. Think that combat system mixed into a light Metroidvania, and it's really fucking pretty. And the Berlinist worked on the soundtrack. The Berlinist is the one that did the soundtrack for Grease as well. So I was super fucking excited for that. Need to get into some more of that. And
what was that game, or what was it called?
Worldless.
Is it Worldless or World List?
Worldless.
Less.
WORLDLESS.
Well, you just put it on my Steam wish list.
Yeah, the aesthetic is real pretty, and it's really fucking cool.
Ooh,
so
I'm loving it. I'm seeing it on Steam right now. I am loving
this. It's really fucking neat. And I felt really bad because this came out at the same time that Michael and I were talking about him playing Grime, and he was saying that he loved everything about Grime except the combat. And I was really hoping Worldless was going to be one that he would enjoy. But on the back of that conversation and getting into Worldless, I'm like, this is going to be another one like Grime for you, where you will love everything surrounding it except for playing it. So, which is sad and unfortunate, but I mean, that's just a differential in taste. It's one where I will end up telling him, like, you should experience it, but watch a Let's Play. So that's kind of where I landed on that. At least in terms of my recommendation for Michael specifically, and for anybody else that isn't big on the whole parry mechanic thing, check out Worldless, but just watch a playthrough. So because it is really pretty, and the music and the rhythm, and it's good. I really like it. I think it should have gotten more attention than it did. It deserved to be much more in the spotlight than it was or has been. Other than that, I've been dabbling in some old Xbox favorites. I've spent entirely too much time fucking around with Geometry Wars 1 and 2 again. So
no one can blame you there.
Yeah, taking it way back. I've also been playing the anniversary edition of Halo 1, and boy fucking howdy, it looks pretty. The visuals are there. The presentation is on par, but man, does it highlight some fucking problems with the original Halo. Mostly the fact that, oh my God, they are terrible at communicating where to go.
Oh my God.
Everything looks the same.
Yeah.
And they need to mark waypoints way more than they do.
Yeah. I will say the anniversary edition, specifically on the library mission, is so much better because there are actually arrows on the ground to point you in the right way. And normally I hate lazy mechanics like that. That's like, you can't find a way to point us the right direction without putting literal arrows to tell us where to go in the world. Like, I'm not joking. One time it was in Miles Morales, when you're playing Spider-Man and you're in the vent trying to be sneaky. There is a fucking painted in the world arrow telling you the direction to go. Like, who is going in the vent to paint that arrow to tell Spider-Man where to go? But the library is the one mission that was so bad in the original game. I'm willing to put aside willing to put aside my opinion on that to say, you know what? Maybe they should be on the ground here.
Yeah. Now, I will say though that the anniversary edition has a feature that I really wish was in more like remasters. You can't do it so much with a remake, but with a remaster you can. And that is the press button to see the original.
I did that so much, like just
Oh, I
going back
have
and
to.
forth.
It's so great.
Yeah. I'll tell
It's
you,
so great.
I'll tell you this, Larry. You will like Halo 2's anniversary so much more.
Okay.
It is. I feel like they got the flaws of the first one, and were like, okay, how can we stay loyal to this while still building upon it? I think it helps
Yeah,
a lot that Halo 2 is just a better game than Halo 1 in general.
it was. It definitely was. But yeah, so I've been piddling with that. Zoe and I have been dabbling in some Gears of War 1
Ooh.
co-op, and I am fucking terrible at it. Olivia was watching us play, and she's like, Dad, you're not good at this. And I'm like, no, Daddy is not good at this. This is not Daddy's type of game.
I,
Daddy, this is Zoe's type of game. Daddy's type of game is puzzle games like Cocoon. And I can reference that and she'll understand that because Olivia's been playing Cocoon. She really likes Cocoon. She's really fucking good at Cocoon. It's impressive watching that child work that game out on her own. And but in any case, so yeah, I set my difficulty on Gears all the way down. And I'm still fucking dying in the tutorial.
Gears of War 1, the 360 version, not the remake,
Yeah.
was the very first game I ever raged at. Not because I kept dying, but because on the Berserker mission, Dom kept dying. And if he dies, the mission restarts.
Fails. Yeah. My
And so
problem with
I'm in front of the door trying to get the Berserker to charge at me so I can dodge at the last minute. But nope, the Berserker smells Dom because he's right in the way and then downs him. And then I have to run to him before the Berserker gets him. But guess what? Because the Berserker just charged into him, they're 5 feet apart.
See, my problem that I'm having is that all the fucking locusts are all brown and gray, and they don't look like at a distance, they don't look any different from the fucking humans. It all just looks the same to me.
That, unfortunately, is a sign of the times of when it came out.
Oh, I know, and it just makes it hard for me to play. I need better visual distinction.
I liked it a lot when I was in high school. I can admit it might not have aged very well.
Uh-huh. You would think with the remaster or the anniversary or whatever the hell it is, they'd cleaned that up and done something. But no, it's still all brown. So, which is sad and a shame. Other than that, Vampire Survivors is still in my fucking rotation for just piddly around game. I haven't gotten to dig into the new content yet. If I remember right, I don't think it's hit the Switch yet. I think the Switch is going to be the last to get the new like adventure mode DLC stuff, which is okay. I'm still fucking around with shit and ticking boxes anyways, so I'm okay with that fact. But yeah, that's what I've been playing. It's a lot. I've dabbled in a lot. Halo, I'll at least finish the first one. I don't know if it's going to compel me to go through the rest of the series. I played through all the mainline games through 5 up to the end mission because the end mission pissed me off and I stopped and I just wasn't having fun with 5. And Eddie and I have talked about this at length years ago. It's just the fact that 5 didn't deliver the game that it advertised.
No, neither did Infinite. I'll say that.
Well, they didn't even finish Infinite.
That, yeah, we promised local co-op will be in every Halo game at the launch from here on out. Well, we didn't get local co-op in, but we'll patch it in later. Hey guys, we're giving up on local co-op.
Yeah, no. So, but I am curious to see where the story goes in Infinite. So who knows? Maybe I'll keep putzing through these,
I will
and I might
say,
actually finally finish 5.
I assume you're playing Master Chief Collection if you're going through
Yeah.
Halo. Yeah, give Halo 2 Anniversary a try before you give up on replaying all those Halos. You don't have to finish it, but Halo 2 Anniversary is so much better than Halo 1 Anniversary.
I'll at least dip into it one way or the other. As to whether or not I make the full run, I don't know. That's probably just going to depend on my fucking mood. Don't get me wrong though. I mean, I really like I'm an outlier here, but I really liked 4. The the visual aesthetic in 4 did a lot for me, but a lot of that I think comes down to the fact that there's a lot of visual crossover in 4 with the Metroid Prime series, because some of the art leads from Retro ended up going over to 343 and working on Halo 4. So you see a lot of that similar style in there, and I like that fact. And I like
I'll,
that style.
I'll say 4's campaign was okay. It was just the
I like the
multiplayer.
story in 4. I didn't give a shit about the multiplayer. It's not
Yeah.
what I turn up for. So I'm here for the campaign and the story, and in that 4 delivered.
Yeah. That I will say 4's campaign was on par. I wouldn't say it's as good, but I'd say it's on par with the rest of the series before it.
3 and 4 had my favorite campaigns. So, but again, I like different things out of my stories and campaigns than most people do, especially most of the target Halo audience. So, but do what you will with that information.
The target
So,
Halo audience, aka the people Paramount Plus are ignoring.
well, I don't know. We'll see what they do with season 2. Though I will say, I don't think season 1 was nearly as bad as everybody made it out to be.
I do.
It had problems, but I do not think it was as bad as everybody made it out to be. My biggest gripe with season 1 was the stuff with the kid didn't go anywhere. Like once John dropped her off with his buddy, that whole storyline just withered. It didn't go anywhere.
I don't know how deep I can talk about this on this podcast because you probably don't want it to be that kind of podcast, but my biggest gripe is that Master Chief, how do I put this nicely? Assaults someone who is a prisoner, and I don't just mean he beats the shit out of them.
Oh, I know. And again, I think that's something that season 1 did well, is getting into a lot of moral complexity. Now granted, I think a lot of that moral complexity came from digging into the history of the Spartan program and the super cunt that was running the program, not to mention the way Cortana came to be, and looking at their take on how they did it. Boy howdy, like right up until about the end, Cortana gave me the ick.
Yeah. I'd say a
But that
lot of the
said,
show gave me the ick.
but that said, it's evoking a feeling and an emotion, and it's doing that very well. So, and I think that that's a lot of what they wanted to get into, from what I can tell. And I think that they executed on that very well. So, but that's just me. So I think here's a good spot to take a quick second and shout out our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with incredible fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Check out one of their newest ones, Bull's Blood. Very patchouli forward, really interesting. Really evokes that kind of like south of the border Mexican cantina, bullfighter desert rose scent and feel and emotion in it. Really, really cool. And now you don't have to just smell good. Now you can Be clean with imaginary authors with their bar soaps. My favorite fragrance, my signature scent, A City on Fire, now, along with others, comes in a bar soap variety. And let me tell you, as somebody that's really kind of finicky about their soap, I'm impressed. I use it, I get out of the shower, and I feel legit like squeaky clean. And I smell good. So go check them out. Link in the show notes. Use the link. Get some of their stuff. You know, if you don't want to drop 50 or $100 on a big bottle, they've got awesome little sample sizes for like $6 a piece. You can build your own sample pack and check out a bunch. Really, really cool. Super awesome people. Go check out Imaginary Authors. And with that taken care of, let's jump straight to the break. And we're back with the third half of the show. This week, we're diving down the warp pipe. And we're asking the question, will we ever see another dedicated handheld portable gaming system again? Or is the time just gone? And joining me to have this discussion is my homeboy, Wes Evans.
Hey, I don't get a celebrity's last name this time?
No, not for the third half of the show.
Okay.
So, let's talk here, because a brief history of handhelds, or an abbreviated history, pocket-sized, one might call it. So we went from, and I know there's some we're leaving out here, but we're going to hit the big ones because that's kind of the trail that you follow here. We had the Game Boy, legendary, iconic. Then we shrank it down to the Game Boy Pocket. And Sega was floating around there trying its hardest with the Game Gear. And don't get me wrong, the Game Gear, from a technological standpoint, was really impressive. Full color backlit screen, looked great. But fuck me, that battery life. What the hell? We get the Game Boy Color. Then we get the Game Boy Advance. Nintendo remains just unchallenged in the field. The Game Boy Advance goes through its iterations. We get the original, the wide format. And then we get what most would consider to be a masterpiece, the Game Boy Advance SP. With 2 iterations, mind you. They never really talked about it, but the original SP was front lit with the screen. And they quietly phased those out and brought in a backlit version of the SP. Much improved. Thank God we got rid of the glare. Cool. And then Sony starts to try and get in the game with the PSP. And the PSP was really cool. The PSP was like the modern day Game Gear. It was advanced. It had a beautiful screen. Great graphics. It was miles ahead, but it had some problems. Because as awesome as that screen was, that thing was just begging to be scratched and scuffed and fingerprinted and fucking destroyed. Like, in no way was that system pocket friendly. But at the same time, happening over here, Nintendo comes rolling out with that big silver brick DS. And this thing was wild. 2 screens? What the fuck? What are we doing? Touchscreen? Okay. You can play your Game Boy Advance games and your DS games. You can have... This thing was built to hold 2 games at the same fucking time. Cool. I'm here for that action. Now, the screen needed some work, and it got some work. It got some love because we got the DS Lite. And it got a little smaller. It got more pocket friendly. Both DSs had the clamshell. We're keeping those screens safe. Cool. I feel a little better putting this in my pocket now. Then comes the DSi, the DSi XL, and we started getting bigger and bigger again. And my pockets became unhappy about this. And then eventually comes the 3DS and the PS Vita. And the 3DS, the original form factor wasn't bad. The corners were a little rough on the hands. But in the PS Vita, again, Sony doing Sony, where we're trying to push the limits of the technology, but with no regard for whether or not this thing will actually travel well. And Sony basically just abandoned the Vita like a redheaded stepchild under a staircase somewhere. And Nintendo wrote out the 3DS. They did. But after that, we had the Switch, the hybrid warrior system. You could take it anywhere. It's not going to fit in a pocket, but you can pick it up and it can go with you. And then even the Switch Lite, a little smaller, a little more travel friendly. I still wouldn't quite call it pocket friendly. But after that, what's next? We're on the cusp of, what might be the air quotes here, Switch 2, because Lord only knows what they aren't doing. There's recently been some patent illustrations that have hit the internet about what people think it might be because they're patenting stuff. Though I'm sorry to tell you, but look here, y'all. If those patents are just getting out publicly, it's not going to be the next fucking Switch. Whatever the hell they're doing for their next system is probably nearing completion. There's no way. But this all brings us to the question, will we ever see the return of a dedicated, portable, pocket handheld? Or did cell phones kill it? Because if we're being honest here, cell phone games just aren't that great usually. Like, there's some good ones, but they are really few and far between. And honestly, the ones that I fiddle with the most are ones that I can also play on my PC or elsewhere, like Magic Arena or Hearthstone, or just handheld versions of stuff that I have on my console, like Slay the Spire. Occasionally there's a few exclusive gems like Monument Valley, but
isn't Monument Valley on Steam now?
It might be. I'm thinking of when it came out originally, though. I'm pretty sure it was mobile only. But does the current landscape leave room for a dedicated handheld to be worth doing again?
So,
because with where the technology is now, because that's the other thing, there's a resurgence by way of stuff like the Analog Pocket and others that are very similar. So there's obviously a call for it, at least to be able to play the old stuff and emulate retro shit. But what about new?
So
what do you think?
If you're talking specifically about pocket sized, so stuff like DS, 3DS, I think that's
no
dead.
Bigger than, yeah.
I think that's dead. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Simply put, battery technology and computing technology are not advancing at the same rate. And a big reason why I think the Switch is the size that it is and not closer to 3DS, DS, something like that, is because in order to get a 720p looking good at all remotely on your screen, it's going to take up so much battery. It cannot be much smaller than it is now. Otherwise, you're going to have a battery life of maybe an hour or two. So that, because if you look at the hardware of the Switch, like you open one up, The computing part of it is maybe a quarter of what you've got.
Yeah.
The big bulk of it is going to be the battery. So if you want something that can display quality picture and not eat up your battery, you're going to basically have to resort to using your cell phone. If we're talking about dedicated handhelds and that something that's not designed to go on a TV or a computer monitor, that I think is not dead yet. But I think it's on its way out. I think the Steam Deck is a great example of how it can survive with the right support. But the thing with that is, Valve is really trying to push this. And a big reason why I think Valve is trying to push the Steam Deck so much is because they're trying to move away from Windows, because, the Steam Deck runs on Linux, not Windows. And so I think they're trying to say we can't trust Microsoft's OSs anymore to be, to be something popular enough, because we see where Windows 11 is going compared to Windows 10. Windows 12, what if it's even worse than that? Well, here's this free and open source operating system. What if we can make our own hardware that runs on that to push developers to make more games work on Linux in case we have to jump ship? So that might be more of a conspiracy, but we're seeing that Valve is backing this a lot. And a lot of the Steam library can run on it, right? You have Deck verified, you have runs on Deck, like the various levels of how much can we trust this to run on this dedicated handheld we've had. Right. Valve has proven that they're willing to put forth what it takes for this to be a competitor to Nintendo, and that's by surviving outside this market. We've seen time and time again throughout the history of handhelds, people have tried to step up against Nintendo. Sega with the Game Gear, Sony with the PSP and PS Vita. And almost every time, in terms of sales, they have failed astonishingly. At least in comparison to Nintendo sales. This is not a comment on the quality of games for the Game Gear, PSP, and Vita, all right? Those all have great games on them. I am not denying that. But if you look at the sales numbers, when Sony was on top of the home console market with the PS2, and then they weren't on top with the PS3 for a little bit, but came back with the PS4, they still lost with the PSP and PS Vita. So I think it shows that Nintendo has such a strong holding in the handheld market that as soon as they move away from dedicated handhelds, which has happened with the Switch, then I don't see the market surviving unless you count phones. And a conspiracy theory on my part says the Steam Deck is just to get more developers to push games on Linux. So once that has happened, will Valve be doing more of this?
All right, so hear me out here. I feel you. I think there's a spot for it, but I think we go the other way. And I think analog is shown the way. Because analog is, putting out these really nice, like, emulator-friendly handheld systems and devices, right? And I see the potential for two spots in here. Nintendo takes one. They just fucking do. And I see a third party coming along, taking the other. And I see Nintendo doing it first, if it's going to happen. They come in, they release something that's like SP sized, maybe even micro sized. I think SP might be the right size though, and maybe even the right form factor. But we don't do like the Game Boy Advance mini console kind of thing. No. We take that old form factor, maybe slick it up just a little bit. You could probably get a little thinner because no cartridge slot. If anything, micro SD card slot. So they release the virtual console portable, where we've got a subscription model where, say, like, you've got a Nintendo Online subscription, all the retro games from NES through Game Boy Advance. You probably exclude, say, 64 just for control complications, but all those accessible. It's got Wi-Fi built in, no 4G, no 5G, no like mobile network, just Wi-Fi. That's enough. And all those games, you know, if you've got that subscription, you've got access. And then in addition, you open up a shop where you can go in and individually purchase other old school retro games or indie games that meet and can run on the reduced hardware specifications of this smaller device. So it's essentially you're kind of doing a Nintendo version of like the Analog Pocket. And I think that's the way to go here. I do. And then from there, I see a third party coming out, whether it's probably not Valve at this point because they're doing the Steam Deck, which, you know, is fine. But another third party opens it up, and I think we almost got there with the Ouya. Like they had a great idea that just fell apart at the end for a whole number of reasons. That's a whole nother conversation. But, you know, something that runs a pretty universal platform where you can put on tons of indie retro style games that look great on a smaller screen, only need a couple of buttons of input. You know, I think that's the way to go here. That's what my brain screams, and that's what it wants. I'm like, I don't even need you pushing like the latest and greatest, because that's the thing. You know, back in the day, you wanted bleeding edge. You played on a console hooked to a TV. You wanted something fun, bite-size on the go. You busted out the Game Boy. And I think splitting that up again could work. Except you don't do a full split. You go back to bleeding edge is connected to the TV. A follow-up hybrid, a Switch 2, could make a solid middle ground. And then a lo-fi handheld is your third pillar.
Here is my counter to that. And it is one thing that you said combined with business practices that Nintendo has been doing lately. And that is the no cellular data, 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever G we're on these days. And depending solely
the next one's
on
going to
your
be the G spot.
Yeah, and depending solely on your Wi-Fi connection. And that is this. I can only speak for myself, but I cannot see a large market of people spending several $100s just to have a device that works in their bed and when they don't want to go to the TV or to play on the toilet or anything like that. Because
I don't think it's several $100s. I don't think it caps $150.
That is assuming, however much. Well, I don't want to make any assumptions on how Nintendo would price that, but we've seen that they're like I can't remember what it was called, but like their dedicated handheld that was just Mario, the original Super Mario, and the dedicated one that was just Legend of Zelda. Those were
$50 a pop.
Right.
Those were $50 a pop, but those were also like limited specialty collector items. They were less for being a handheld.
But
those were celebratory collector items.
But if we look at that and assume that they're calling this next new console something that's like your virtual console, one, you are assuming that people are going to be, you're basically taking the mobile out of mobile gaming is what I'm trying to get out here. Because if you require Wi-Fi connection specifically in order to use it, then you can't play it in the car. If you're trying to play it at work, it's probably going to be blocked by whatever your company's firewall is. You can't play it on train or bus, probably.
I think there's where there's a misunderstanding, because you don't have to have the Wi-Fi connection to play it. The Wi-Fi is just there to be able to connect it periodically to the shop to download new games, update and like verify the subscription.
Right. But that also goes into how long will it be before like it you stop saying that how long basically can you go without doing that check to verify that subscription? Can it not just have like because if you don't do that constantly, some companies are just going to outright say, nope, it got canceled 5 minutes ago, sorry. And sure, you can say, well, we'll make it once a month, once a day, something along those lines.
Every 3 to 7 days, maybe, because at that point you figure it's got to, it's going to come home with you and reconnect to the house network pretty fucking regularly.
And while that is certainly fair, I myself don't see the market for gaming in bed and also not being able to use this device or a similar device to play the same games on the TV being big enough.
I'm not talking about for in bed. I'm talking about I want something that actually fits properly in my pocket that I can take with me wherever the hell I go.
Right. And so one thing
Do I have a 10-minute smoke break at work and I want to play something for 10 minutes? Bust it out. It's in my pocket. You know why it's in my pocket? Because it fits. It can come with me.
Right. And if it's going to do that, I really, really think if Nintendo is going to keep doing what they've been doing with the Virtual Console, because I feel like if it wasn't working for them, they would have just brought back the classic Virtual Console. They would have said, we hear you. Rather than charge you $20 a year, we'll do $5 a pop for NES games, $5 a pop or $8 a pop for SNES games, $10 a pop for N64 games, etc., etc. I feel like if the current model wasn't working for them, they would have switched back to that already. And so I just am saying, I don't see them doing something along the lines of going back to Pocket just for that. Because I think anything that requires a subscription service or any kind of check, if it's going to be online, is probably not going to be in a device you put in your pocket, where you could easily shut off the Wi-Fi and play for a little longer than you would have been.
See, I don't think the check is such a big deal, because one, like Virtual Console on the Switch, those all have a check every couple of days. Two, there's Wi-Fi just about everywhere. I mean, hell, you could be out in the middle of the fucking sticks and just turn on the hotspot on your phone for 2 minutes. And bam, you're good. If for whatever reason your thing hasn't, connected to the network in a couple of days, and like, oh shit, like, oh no, just mobile hotspot on my phone for 2 minutes to re-up the verification and off I go. Cool. Like I said, every 3 to 7 days, you can make that a week, and that's plenty. Hell, you can go on a cruise for fucking 7 days and not have to check in. But and like I said, not just the Virtual Console stuff, but you can't tell me there's not a bunch of indie stuff that could run on a reduced capability hardware.
There absolutely,
because so much indie stuff leans into the retro. I guarantee you could and should, because there's a ton of that stuff where honestly I like playing it handheld on my Switch more than I do playing it on the TV. It just has the right feel.
I think a big part of that is we're also having to assume Nintendo would allow other people on their store, which you'd think would be a good business move if they did. But this is Nintendo we're talking about.
I think, frankly, what they do, what they could do and should do, if we were to go down this road, is they start looking at, they build the architecture. They go, this is the architecture. It is similar to the Switch, just not as much horsepower. Dumb it down. And I know I'm not a developer or programmer. I'm just kind of talking out my ass here, but it makes sense in my head, and I fully recognize I can be grossly incorrect. But you just go, these are the specs. If your game can run these specs, we'll mark it as something that can be played here and on the Switch. If not, it just goes on the Switch eShop. A lot like what Valve is doing with the Steam Deck and, on Steam. That just makes entirely too much sense to me.
I don't think I have an immediate counter to that.
See, this makes sense now, and you're thinking about it, aren't you?
The only thing I can say to that is if it makes sense, Nintendo won't do it.
Nintendo will do it, but they'll do it in some like warped way that makes you go, but why? That's what they'll do, because that's what they always do.
Right.
And it'll have a few pros, but you'll spend the whole time going, but why though? But then again, they've got a lifetime of doing things that don't make any sense and make you go, but why though? But then making money hand over fist.
That's just because their games are still that good for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like as soon as Nintendo's games decline in quality, even the slightest, they're gonna have to start being, we have to do pro consumer practices now.
Right. But I mean, even then, there's probably still stuff they could put out or even re-release from the DS and the 3DS that could probably be simplified down to meet that criteria. We've seen re-releases of DS games like Dementium the Ward just got a Switch re-release. Fucking Trace Memory, Another Code, is coming back to the Switch all prettied up and everything else. I don't know what all they're doing to it, but it's not out of the question.
So,
and I think this would be kind of like the Micro, where it's technically a niche product, but there is a market for it. So if you priced it correctly with the right form factor and specs, and you market it correctly to that market, there's money to be made.
Here's one thing I just thought up of. If I were a business major or thought of running businesses, maybe I would have thought of this sooner. Would Nintendo put out a dedicated handheld console if they're going to continue down the path of hybrid consoles like they did the Switch? Now, we don't know yet if Nintendo is going to keep doing hybrids like they've done with the Switch, or if they might return to the traditional one for home, one for mobile.
On the go, yeah.
But to some extent, there's someone who only cares about, like, we know there are people who only care about playing their Switch handheld. That's why Nintendo made a Switch Lite.
Mm-hmm.
If they go back to dedicated handheld, that is going to cut into the Switch's sales, because there is going to be someone who says, I'm just happy with this, whether it be retro only or whether it be similar to the Switch, maybe slightly less specs. Is absolutely going to cut into their sales of both. So
I don't think it will, but you got to play it right. But I can see how to get there. But keep going.
But yeah, so I don't think, so long as Nintendo keeps going down this hybrid path with the Switch, that they will go back to dedicated pocket Now that I'm thinking about it, because I just don't see a world where it doesn't cut into the Switch's sales at least a little bit.
Okay, so hear me out. Here's how we solve for the equation. We'll call it the, I don't know, fuck it. We'll call it the VC pocket, for lack of a better term here. I'm sure somebody will come up with something better, and if you do, send it to me. I want to know what it is. But
my uncle works at Nintendo. VC Pocket's actually the working title. We're getting the cease and desist.
It just hit my inbox. So, if the VC Pocket uses the Nintendo Online subscription model, where like $20 a year, and you get NES and Super Nintendo and original Game Boy, and you can access compatible indie games through the shop on there, all great. But and add in there, if you spring for the expansion pass for Nintendo Switch Online, you get your Game Boy Advance games too, even that you can play on the VC Pocket. You have built-in advertising for the Switch, because if somebody goes, I'm just going to buy this VC Pocket and I'm going to spend however much a year for the NSO with the expansion pass, then you've also still got some of the stuff just from that you can only play on the Switch, stuff like the 64 games and whatnot. And I don't know, maybe a few other odds and ends. You get some of the perks, like the access to the Animal Crossing DLC stuff and the Mario Kart DLC, things like that. And you get like an occasional little reminder, or a little tiny little banner scroll across the screen and says, hey, don't forget, with your subscription you could also play this on the Switch. And you've got built-in advertising to get somebody to buy a Switch, and the other stuff that they are technically paying for, but it's just not accessible on the VC Pocket.
I guess the only thing I can say about that is I play Xbox a lot. There are banner ads all over that, not necessarily in the games, but like on the home screen.
Right.
And I am so tuned out to them that I can't tell you what the last game that was on one of those ads was.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, and I get that. It's just one of those little subtle subconscious things, though. It'd be there. But I think the other thing too, though, is that, like I said, there's just, even with the hybrid system like the Switch, it's not a pocket friendly go anywhere system the way the Game Boys were, the way even the PSP was, and that's technically borderline. But there are those of us where it's like, yeah, I want something to play when I'm out and about. And frankly, I hate, for the most part, playing games on my phone. I don't like touchscreen buttons. I want something with that tactile feedback that feels correct, responsive, almost clicky, but not quite. Just that perfect feel in your hands. And your phone will never fucking be that, ever. And they've tried getting close with the controller shells that hold your phone and shit. I know that there are some that have toyed with some of those and even liked some of them to an extent. I think Tom and Chris have dabbled on that, because they've talked about that over on 1H1D with some of the Play Anywhere stuff that's compatible with Game Pass and whatnot. But it's just not the same, and I don't think it ever will be the same, as pulling out a dedicated handheld gaming system where you fire it up and there's games and it's just, let's go. That's it. Turn it on and game. And that, for me, is a big missing component in the market. And I think we've stopped thinking about it a lot, but I think if somebody put it out and did it right, it would sell. Will it make all the money? No. Will it make enough money and make a profit? Yes. I think that's probably where we hit the biggest hang up, is because anymore, and I know this gets into a larger topic we've talked about time and again on this fucking show, and I know I've had this conversation with LeGrew, is that it just, the companies are so fucking hung up on we need to make all the money instead of we're making a profit. We turned a profit. If you're okay turning a profit but not making all the money, there's an avenue for this. And I think Analog and its other assorted competitors have shown the way. Have shown that there's a market for it. And then if you add into that, you know, and maybe the analogs of the world are that competitor where it'll let you play other indie stuff, you know, like PC indie games. That'd be great. Honestly, I've kicked around the idea of a Steam Deck for a while now, but the thing is, I really only want it just to play a bunch of indie games that are only on PC. I'm like, if I could have a more affordable option for that, because it doesn't need that kind of fucking horsepower. It doesn't need to be that expensive. But that's all I want it for. What do you think? Yes, no? Would you buy it?
I would, but
I would.
For the right price at the very least.
Yeah. I think it goes no higher than 150. And if we're talking VC Pocket, given what the current price scale is for Nintendo's platforms out there of 350, 300, and 200, I think the VC Pocket is 1 to 125. At $100, I wouldn't even think about it. Like,
at
sign me up.
$100, next paycheck, it's mine.
Exactly. 125, I go, yeah, okay.
Next, yeah, that'll be like
At 125, I hem and haw about it for about 10 minutes, and then I go, okay.
Right.
And then I go home, and then I sync it to my Nintendo account, and I've got games ready to go. And it goes everywhere with me. Like, at this point, it would be the thing that would replace a Game Boy Micro in my pants pocket. You know, give me something that's like that size, that form factor. I mean, at this point, we're 20 years down the road from the Micro. We can do way better screens at that same size. Just go with it. Like, that's the right move, I think. And I was even talking to LeGrew about it. I'm like, bro, Analog Pocket is killing it. If they really wanted my money, they'd be making an Analog Pocket the same size and form factor as a GBA Micro. They had done that, they'd have had my money. That's my hold up on the Analog. It's still the size. But I think it's doable. And I think there's a market there for it. Is it a huge market? No. Is it big enough? Absolutely. We want to put some final thoughts on this?
My final thought on it is, seems like such a good idea, Nintendo won't do it. But
there's the crime.
ultimately, if I'm being honest, while I can see there being like the niche market, and with companies like Analog doing the Analog Pocket, I don't see another major publisher on the size of Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Valve getting back into the Pocket handheld market. I don't think
Microsoft never went there.
No, I guess I shouldn't say Microsoft going back into it, but a better way of putting it, I don't see any company other than Nintendo having any chance of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I know I'm not counting iPhone for the App Store, Android for Google Play.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about mobile. We're talking about handheld.
Right. I don't see any company other than Nintendo doing that at a large scale, I guess would be a good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm. At a retail
Obviously,
scale.
not at a retail scale, no.
Mm-hmm.
I can see maybe a few of them jumping into a similar to Switch Steam Deck situation where it's not pocket sized but is bag sized.
Yeah.
But that's a strong maybe.
I mean, there's already a handful of them out there. You know, even the Steam Deck's got competitors out on the field now.
Yeah, isn't I think at one
There's a
point
few of them.
Microsoft was trying to push, was it the Rogue Ally? Is it pronounced Rogue, ROG?
Maybe.
Rogue, ROG, one of those.
Right.
Anyway,
So,
because I know they were pushing that it was Game Pass compatible, so you could play your Game Pass games over the cloud on it.
mm-hmm.
But
Final thought. When can I pre-order the VC Pocket?
Nintendo, if you make it $100, that is a next paycheck purchase for me.
Make it 125. It's
serious.
next paycheck in 10 minutes. But like straight up, it makes too much sense. It just does. Hell, bring back the changeable faceplates from the Micro too, and let PowerA just print gobs of faceplates for this little bastard that are themed out with Nintendo properties. Holy shit, yes please. Just let them go nuts like they have with Switch controllers. I'm okay with it. You know, it's you want to get the Game Boy Micro out of my pocket? Give me the VC Pocket. Like let's go. It makes too much goddamn sense, and I'm flummoxed that it hasn't happened. Now, granted, I will say that I don't think the viability for the VC Pocket in the way that we have laid it out today was there until Game Boy Advance hit NSO. I think that was the last missing piece to make this all really string together correctly. But NSO has Game Boy Advance, NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis. I think there's some turbo graphics in there still. Other odds in it. All of that about that big, micro-sized VC Pocket. $125. You've got my money. Sell it to me. Let's go. But I think that's where I'm at. So if you drop $125 on a VC Pocket, let me know. What would it take to get you to buy a new dedicated handheld system? Let us know. Hit us up on Twitter, or email us, or wherever else you can find all the links to all the socials down in the show notes. Hit us up. Let us know. I'm curious. Is it just us having delusions, or is there more to it? And we've just left an entire swath of the market wide open, waiting for somebody to come along. But I think that's where we're going to close out today. So I want to say a huge shout out and a huge thank you to everybody that tuned in and listened and joined us this week. Thank you to Wes. Thank you to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors. Go check them out. Their link is in the show notes as well. Go get something and smell good. And we'll talk to you guys all next week here on World 11 Podcast, powered by the World 11 Podcast Network. Press start to engage your mind. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Mwah.
Peace.